Hello friendos and randos, welcome back to another video. If you have seen my Twitter, you will know that I have recently been very disappointed to have gotten a 9th place finish at the recent Flagship EX, and I was playing a rare deck for me because I don't think many see me play this deck, but I was playing BY Luffy. BY Luffy is a deck that I've been practicing a decent amount, like just randomly. I would usually play it on like the Western servers. Like I would play on Western webcam and stuff because it's a deck that didn't really change much over the course of different sets, so I was able to play it even if like I was like a set ahead or like even a set and a half ahead of the West. And other than that, I think it is a pretty fun deck to me because of the Moria combos and stuff, and I think there's quite a bit of skill expression in how to play the deck. So I've been having my fair bit of fun with it and that's why I think I ended up bringing this to the Flagship EX in the end. Sadly, I did end up bubbling out at 9th place, so I did not get the serial ace, but I think I am still proud of the result. 6-1, I mean 7-1, but I got a bye, so so 6-1. 6-1 is one of the better scores I've had in my career, and I'm pretty happy to have hit that score. Especially after not having like many results recently. So I wanted to just quickly share the deck as well as the thought processes behind why I chose the deck in the first place, as well as why I made certain decisions for the deck as well. So why I chose to bring BY Luffy was because Lucci was getting a bit more popular, and you can see from the recent like Japanese championships that Lucci won the entire tournament. So it is a pretty strong deck. I think primarily it has a very good matchup into Bonnie as well as into Blue Dolphy, which is of course BDIF at the moment. So I thought it would be a really good choice to bring this to counter Lucci. Of course, if you look at my matchup spread, I didn't fight any of them, but it is what it is. And other than that, I think the deck is very easy to play when it comes to the general, I guess, lines, and there's a lot of burden of execution is put on the opponent when they're playing against BY Luffy. Because if you've played against BY Luffy, you kind of know that they don't really have to be super proactive when it comes to like actually playing cards down. Primarily, like they can kind of just spend a few turns jamming face, and then after that, you're kind of forced to have answers to what the BY has. And if you don't, then you just kind of lose. The BY can kind of just do its own thing. They don't have to force like transform early, and they can adjust the gameplay according to whether or not you choose to hit them early and whether or not you choose to starve them. So I think the deck is pretty versatile, and I enjoy the fact that it puts the burden of execution on the opponent. Like generally, there are good BY players, of course. I think in the East, who comes to mind off the bat is of course Jellybeans Jeremy, who is one of the most notable BY Luffy players in the East. Other than that, of course, we have the West. We have Jonas, we have Clyde, who are both very accomplished players of their own right, but Jonas recently won the whole regional with BI Luffy. I think Clyde Jackson Huang won nationals, so he won his right to worlds back-to-back years. So very, very impressive, but I think the deck itself is really, really powerful as well. So let me just go through the deck list that I ran. What makes it different in OP09 compared to OP08, because this is one of the times where actually the deck does change a little bit from set to set. I definitely would not run this list for an OP08.5 meta, and I will show you why very shortly. So of course with BY Luffy, you're gonna see the very standard like big brothers in general. So of course we have ST Luffy, we have Sabo Blocker, we have AK Luffy. So 4 offs of all 3, very standard. You can't really like deviate from this ratio in my opinion. And then we have our babies. So we have Baby Luffy and we have Baby Sabo. So of course this is also a must-have. And then to search for all of the pieces, we also have 4 of Gup. So pretty standard so far. You can't really deviate from these ratios in BY Luffy. Like there's no way around it. This is just the core of the deck. So that makes things easy as well. In terms of other core cards, of course, we also have 4 8-cost Moria. You can't really deviate from that. It's the most important card in order to bring back your babies so that you can reuse them. And also it helps you to bring back this card as well if you need. 4-cost Kuzan. I'm playing 4 of it. I think it's really, really good as a card to, for one, give you a card draw. It's very powerful when you're using this in order to get to 7k base, 1 life. So in quite a few matchups now, 7k base 1 life is very very valuable, and of course being able to call this off the Moria, get 1 card draw, really really good as well. On top of that, this combined with the 8 Luffy, of course clears 8 costs, which is a very key line to clear. In this meta, there's a lot of 8 cost characters. Off the top of my head, Rayleigh, Dragon, 7 cost Newgate in Shanks decks, Jozu in BY Luffy, 8 cost Kid in Bonnie. In P Luffy it hits Luffy Taro, so really really good card. Of course, on play draw a card is really really good as well. Like, you just want to make sure that you cycle to see all of your pieces, especially since this is a combo deck. You need to see like pairs of the brothers, and you also need to see your self-awakeners, like your cards that eat life. So it's really important to really draw a lot of cards. Okay, on the topic of cards that eat life, of course you have your ST Luffy, but then you also want to have cards like your Hiyori and your Flampe. So your 2Ks that take your life for you, and then after that, in Hiyori's case, you get to set one of the brothers on top. In Flampe's case, you get to take a life and then you draw a card. So Hiyori is really good as well off of Moria, because you can do Moria into Hiyori plus baby, and then you can set your life and then transform. So that's really good if you have the relevant baby in hand. So this is really good as a 8 non play. If you've played like the 3 cost Ivankov, it does a similar role as well. Of course, Hiyori doesn't have a 3/4 body with blocker, but it is a 2k and you don't have to force space for it. So I like that combo a lot. Just today also, one combo I did was on Tendon. I did Hiyori first on Tendon, then Hiyori, look at my life, place the relevant brother down. So I had to get information first because I didn't have Hiyori in trash. And then I did Moria into Kuzan plus the Sabo, and then after that I transformed the Sabo that I put on top from my Hiyori. So really very good combo. Hiyori is going to be very very key for that. Okay, next we have also 2 Makino. So I think Makino is probably the weakest of these 3 2k counters, even though that like it does give you information of those 3, but what we're looking for importantly is actually card advantage. So being able to either draw an extra card or to set the card on life, so you don't have to discard and then leader effect. So you can end the turn with, like, let's say you Hiyori on 1 life, you can set the card on top and then you can transform and then leader effect and then go to 2 life, or and then transform again if you have it. So I feel like the Hiyori is much stronger. Okay. Next we have 2 1 cost searcher events. Again, we just want to make it consistent. So 6 searchers I think is a pretty good amount, and I'm pretty happy with that ratio for now. And then now we're going to talk about the addition that we make for OP09, which is 3 of the 6 cost Kingdom Come or Raigo. I think Raigo was really useful today in a few different matchups. Firstly, it was really good against Shanks. Using it to clear a 10 cost 12k body is really really significant, because by doing that you are basically buying yourself 4k counter for like per hit. Like a 12k swing into your 9k body is 4k counter, and generally like you can't get around it, right? Like if they stack multiple 12k bodies, it's going to be a very difficult matchup at the end of the day. So being able to use Kingdom Come to remove something, and then the remaining 4 Dawn, you can put 2 on leader to set your 2 life, and then play 1 baby, and you go 7k base 1 life. So that combo is really really strong. Something that I've been doing a lot more now as well is when I'm trying to set up this Kingdom Come combo, what I will do is I will go like maybe I will have the the ST Luffy on board, and then I will go baby Sabo or baby Luffy and then big Sabo, and I will just make it so that I have 1 life, I have the ST Luffy on board, I have Sabo and Sabo, like I have a baby and I have big Sabo, so you can't clear my board, and next turn I can definitely Raigo you into the Luffy effect and transform to 7k base 1 life. So if I have an additional baby in hand, I can go to 9k base 1 life as well. So it's a really really strong card in that combination. I think it does really well into specifically the Shanks and Blackbeard matchups, because what it did help me with was to clear that 10 cost 12k body and buy me a few turns to continue putting pressure on my opponent with my 5 cost Luffys and my Sabos. Lastly, I took a page out of Clyde's book, so I am running a couple of one-offs. I did run 1 pair of aces, and then my last one-off is a 10 cost Kuzan. Frankly, I actually think this card wasn't that good today, but I also didn't hit a single Bonnie today. I mainly put it in for that Bonnie matchup, but I don't know if it's going to keep its slot in the deck. I feel like maybe it would be better if this was Ice Age instead, or if it was like a 4th Rygo. Like I've been trying to find the timing to play it down, but it's really difficult to put it down in like matchups other than Bonnie, and I guess maybe NL as well. So for now, I think it might receive a card, but we will see if it does receive that card or not. For now, I did put it in, but yeah, I just didn't use it at all today, so I wasn't super happy with it. But I was very happy with the Aces. I think the Aces did a really good job just applying pressure. I might even want to increase their ratios, but if I did, it would have to cut both the Kuzan as well as maybe one Rygo or maybe even one Kuzan. But yeah, I think it's very hard for me to justify cutting Kuzan, because you really want to see it on the 4-down turn. I think that's the most important part to see it. But one other very good timing to drop your Kuzan is if you are on 8 and you are able to go to 0, then you can drop Kuzan into Baby and do Dawn Leader effect and then transform. So again, 7k base 1 life. Or you can also drop it on 9 and you can just drop Kuzan Sabo and set up for next turn. Like if you're going into like a 10 Dawn turn, let's say your 5 or your 7 Dawn turn, you had Luffy on board, and then on your 9 Dawn turn, you just drop Kuzan Sabo. That's really good as well. So you can protect your Kuzan, and then next turn you can 8 Luffy at 8 cost. So whatever 8 cost they play on curve, you can get rid of it. Sorry, the 8 cost they played the previous turn, you can get rid of it. Other than that, yeah, I think that's the basics of the deck list. The main addition, I think, is the Rygo. I think it's really good actually, because there's a lot of tank costs, like important units to clear. Against Shanks, you really want to clear Roger, and the tank cost reducer like Rush Shanks. Against Blackbeard, you really want to clear that tank cost Blackbeard as well. So I think this card is really good. Even against Bonnie, being able to clear the tank cost to Flamingo is pretty useful. And even if you use it to clear like a 5 cost blocker, like that's preventing you from ending the game, I think it's really good as well. So I quite like this card. I might really just swap the 4th Kuzan into it. Sorry, the 10 cost Kuzan into it. But for now, yeah, that's basically the deck. When it comes to the piloting, I have made a video about piloting BY Luffy in the past, which you can definitely check out. I think I'll put it like here. But in terms of the basic combos, I think everyone knows Moria into 2 babies. But other than that, I think the most important thing is making sure that you plan out the next 3 turns. Making sure that you understand, okay, when am I going to 0? How am I going to 0? And what can my opponent do to prevent me from going to 0? So those are the important things to note. But the other most important thing I think you should know is, do I have to go to 0? Right? There's an idea of that I saw on Twitter recently. I forgot the tweet, but basically the idea is urgency, where if I don't go to 0, will I actually like be in trouble? And that's the important thing to consider when you're playing BY Luffy. There's a lot of times where you can actually just hold your stuff. Like you don't have to be proactive. Like I mentioned, right, the burden of execution of playing against BY Luffy is generally on the opponent. So for example, in my loss, I misplayed, yes, by playing like a few of my baby like Sabo and Luffy's on the board, and then I realized, oh wait, I don't have enough counter, and then I just died to Doflamingo punching me like 7k like 5 times. But in terms of burden of execution, you want to make it so that your opponent has to punch into you. So if they are forced to punch into you, then you don't have to spend resources or like deplete your hand to get your life to 0. You can plan it in such a way that you end up at 0 in a very natural way. For example, your opponent sees that they have 3 attacks and they think they can push into you, and then what ends up happening is, like let's say you were at 7k base 1 life at that point, or like you were at 7k base 1 life, and then they have 3 attacks, then they want to push into you, right? And like let's say you have a Sabo on board, so you can allow them to push that life, maybe at the expense of burning like 1 or 2 hand cards, and then that is kind of like going to 0 without having to spend your resources. Instead you do burn some counter, but that also means that you don't have to spend Dawn on it the next turn. So what's important here is understanding how to go to 0 in a natural way, as well as understanding what's the right timing to go to 0. This is maybe a little bit of a complex idea. I'm sure that some of the very trendy masterclasses have covered it. I personally haven't attended any of them, but when it comes to BY Luffy, I think the deck is intuitive in a sense where you need to understand there are times where going to 0 is correct and there are times where going to 0 is not needed, and it is actually optimal to not go to 0. One common example is against Blue Doflamingo, right? A lot of times I find myself going Moria Kuzan 8k Luffy instead of like Moria into double transform. This is because that I want to be at 7k base 1 life instead of 9k base 0 life. 7k base 1 life is actually a very powerful position. Like, it's very hard to kill someone at 7k base, and if they also have like a Sabo on board, then it's very difficult, right? Against decks like Blue Doflamingo, where like actually the Sabo's KO protection is not that important. If you have a Sabo on board from the previous turn, you don't need to Moria into a Sabo, right? Think of what is going to be the most valuable thing. Another consideration is 8k Luffy, you don't always have to use it on the turn that you play it down. Against one good example is against Shanks, right? If they have Lucky Rule on the board, or you can foresee you are going for lethal next turn, and you can predict that maybe they've searched a Lucky Rule in the past, you can keep this Luffy on the board, and then next turn you can Sabo, protect your board, and KO the Rule with the Luffy after swinging 6k with it. So getting value off of this 6k swing is really important. Against Doflamingo, for example, right? Just putting this down on the 5-tone turn, you don't have to force yourself into getting to 2 life. You can put this down, the next turn you play down the ST Luffy, and if like let's say they didn't hit you at all, right? You can do ST Luffy into Flambe, and then swing 7 at something plus KO something else. So that's very strong. And this is especially true for decks that don't have a good answer to the card. Even against Shanks, right? The only real answer they have on like the 6-tone turn, for example, is Gordon Mako, which is okay, sure, right? If they have it, they have it. But otherwise, you can just put it on the board and then use it to swing for 6. A lot of BY Luffy players I see don't have to, like, there's no urgency to use the Luffy's effect. They can just use it to swing 6, but they choose not to. And that is something that I don't fully agree with. So make sure to consider again, actually, do I have to do this, or am I doing this because it's just autopilot? Oh, okay, Moria into Baby Luffy into Egghead. Oh, okay, Egghead draw 1 card. Even if I've got nothing to KO. And then I Sabo. Okay, can. Another good example is I was counting against Shanks. So I was trying to count, oh, okay, do I have enough counter if my opponent drops Roger, for example, right? So I think the situation was I had 4 hand cards after my Moria, right? After I Moria and need effect, I would have 4 hand cards. And then my Moria was going to call AK Luffy and Sabo. Then I was thinking, should I burst my AK Luffy this turn, or should I just wait for next turn? Because if he calls Roger, then I have 4 hand cards. So I had, I think, 2k, 2k, 1k, 1k. So I was going to go 9k base, right? So if he called Roger, I would have to counter 5k for the Roger, and then 1k for like the dragon he had on board, right? I think my hand was 2k, 1k, 1k, 1k actually, yeah. So what I was thinking is, okay, sure, in this case, I don't have to pop the egghead Luffy yet. I can just pop Sabo, and if I draw a second 2k, then I don't need to pop the egghead, right? Of course, this is a little bit greedy, because if I just pop the egghead, I would guarantee 5 hand cards, right? Then I have 2, 2, 2, 1, 1, or like 2, 2, 1, 1, 1, 1, or something like that, and then that would be guaranteed enough counter. But by saving the egghead Luffy this way, I'm able to get ready for my next turn, and I'm able to answer like lethal better. So I'm able to answer the Lucky Rule or whatever blocker he has, and if not, then I just get a 6k swing, right? So that 6k swing is important to have as well. So it's important to note that. Otherwise, one other thing is that right now it's really important to just play down like the babies on board, specifically into matchups that don't really have a good answer into them, like Blue Doflamingo, because what's he gonna do? If he bounces it, sure, good for you, right? Like, you just get it back to your hand, then you just put it back down the next turn, I guess. Into Purple Luffy, you can just play it down as well. Generally, the only answer they have to it is 7 cost Sanji, which is like, okay, sure, like fine. If you do that, you do that. Because that means later you don't have that to answer my blockers. Otherwise, that is some of the main tips that I have for playing BY Luffy. Today was actually the first time I played BY Luffy at a like serious tournament. And I went 6-1. I'm not qualified enough to give a masterclass or anything at the moment, but I think these are some very simple tips of how to pilot the deck at an effective level. I think if you are thinking of playing this deck in OP09, I think it's a really good choice. Primarily again because of its matchup spread. I think it's pretty good into Luffy, it's pretty good into Lucci, it's pretty good into Shanks, if you know how to play around Roger correctly, and if you know how to hold Raigo. So in the Shanks game, for example, I just held this Raigo in my hand for like 4 or 5 turns, and after I used one on the first 10 cost, I just held the second one, and he didn't end up having a second 10 cost to drop on me, but I still held it for a few turns until I was certain that I wouldn't need it, and then after that I was able to cycle it out with the Sabo. But it's really important to have that out to be able to clear and to stay in a position where 7k base 1 life is enough. So make sure to play and plan. I think this deck rewards you for good planning very much, and I really appreciate that aspect of it, so I quite enjoy that part of it. I would love to do like gameplay of it like sooner or later, but for now this is basically the deck in a nutshell. If you have any questions, feel free to leave me a DM, leave it in the comments. I'd be happy to answer with my limited experience of BY Luffy. In terms of the deck itself, I think it's really fun. I hope one day I can max rare it. As of now, I have 2 alternate arts. I do have some of the other arts, but yeah, I just didn't bother swapping them in. But yeah, I think this deck is really fun. Give it a shot. I think you will enjoy it. And yeah, that's it for now. Thank you, friendos and randos, if you watched this far. I really appreciate it as always. Once again, I'm so disappointed about the 9th place bubble out, but it is what it is. I guess tournaments end up that way sometimes, but I think the positive side of things is when it comes to things like this happening, try to understand, I guess, what the mistakes were that led to it in the first place. Like in the first game, I definitely misplayed, and that's why I ended up this way. But if I hadn't misplayed, maybe things would have ended up differently. And if I was a bit luckier on the day itself in terms of like my pairings and everything, then maybe I would have made it, like I would have bubbled it instead. But there's no use dwelling on oh no, what if or whatever. I think what's important is understanding the takeaway is that actually I'm a player capable of going X1 at a tournament. I'm a player that's capable of going X0 at a tournament, and this is a deck that I haven't practiced that much, but I think it was a good choice. And even though I didn't hit many of my good matchups, like I hit 1 black deck and it was Smoker the entire day, like I hit 0 Lucci, right? But I still was able to go X1, and I was even able to beat one of the matchups that people consider to be difficult in Shanks twice. So I think what I took away from this Flagship EX was that I have that potential, I have that metal, I have that dog in me, and I hope I'll be able to prove it at the next big tournament. That being said, thank you, friendos and randos, for hearing me out, hearing my rant out for a little bit. I'm sure that it's not what you come here to watch, but thank you as always for supporting me, supporting my channel, and making One Piece card game fun for me. I really appreciate it. Thank you, friendos and randos, for watching. I will see you guys again next time. Peace out.